you want, what you gonna do when Sheriff John Brown come for you?
Yes, that's right. I was framed. Luckily for me, however, the law requires evidence, which I was counting on the whole time. But that didn't prevent me from going through a barrage of shame and embarrassment for something I didn't even do. Now the story begins with a girl. Yep, I was 14 years old, and I had never kissed a girl or been in a relationship before. But I wanted a relationship. 14 years was long enough, and it was about time, or so I thought. So here we go. This is my teenage tale of misery and woe. Expect enemies, police, parents, accusations.
Why did you do that?
And violent threats.
I'll shove that brownie number 2 of yours down your throat.
All because I decided to talk to a girl. So, there was this girl in high school. We'll call her Mary Jane. Now, I had never really talked to Mary Jane before, but we had a few mutual friends, which I saw as my way in, since I wasn't too keen on spitting my amateurish game in front of gawking bystanders. So I asked her friend who I knew to talk to Mary Jane for me, and see if she'd be willing to give me her phone number, so I could call her for a chat. Wink wink. Anyways, Mary Jane decides to let me give it a shot. So after school, I ring Mary Jane. Yep, ring, not text. This story predates Facebook. Your average teenager didn't have a cell phone. So I had to deal with the possibility of having an awkward moment of silence, which is why I brainstormed on the way home from school. The conversation wasn't that long or interesting, because I basically just pulled 21 questions. To me, that was still better than nothing though. After maybe 15 minutes of blah blah blah, the convo ends with the intention of calling her again. I believe life is good, and I'm happy. And now comes karma. You see, I had a bit of a bad reputation in high school. I had been involved in some fights, and did not really have respect for authority. Me doing something wrong was nothing out of the ordinary. So what happened? Well, Mary Jane's mutual friend, at the time, who had basically been the messenger, obviously asked her all about the phone call. Then the news spread like wildfire, and everybody and their mother ended up knowing about it, which I wasn't even aware of, because I didn't go around telling anyone. Then the weekend comes around. I have all sorts of plans to hang out with my friends, and then the phone rings. It's the police. And they're talking to my dad. Yep, all my plans cancelled. No. The police want me to come down to the police station for questioning. Mary Jane herself has made an accusation against me. Apparently, I've been making threatening phone calls. So at this point, I'm thinking, okay, everything's going to be fine because I didn't do anything wrong. And I really hope the justice system actually works. So after an awkward ride to the police station with my dad, I met the police officer who called the house. And you could tell he was no rookie. Like, I believe he decided to take this case himself in order to defend the honor of this poor sweet little girl being threatened from this horrid monster with no conscience, the next Ted Bundy, which everybody thought was me. So we'll call this guy Officer White Knight. Now Officer White Knight insists that he speak to me alone in the interrogation room. My dad throws me to the wolves, and now begins Officer White Knight's attempts to break me with his Jedi mind tricks. He begins by asking me if I called Mary Jane's house. I answer yes. Officer White Knight is pleased. I surrendered very quickly. Then his expression changes when I utter the word, but I didn't make the phone call you're referring to. He tells me the entire conversation was recorded at 5 a.m. and that her mother was listening on the other line. He then said he had an entire transcript of the conversation. Mary Jane also told the officer herself that she knows my voice, and she knows it was me. He then begins to read the transcript. So here's some highlights of this messed up conversation. Imposter me. Can I come over? Mary Jane. No, it's 5 o'clock in the morning. Imposter me. Then I will rape you. Yep, somebody actually said this while pretending to be me. Now, me being a little immature teen at the time, I have a little giggle when Officer White Knight reads this to me. And Officer White Knight condemns me. Do you think this is funny? Do you think this is a laughing matter? I then try to explain to him that this is most likely just a prank by somebody I know. He then slams his fist on the table and says, I've been in this business for 25 years, and I know when someone's lying to me. This can go the easy way for you or the hard way. If you waste my time, expect the consequences to be harsh. Why would she say she knows your voice? All Officer White Knight hears is, I didn't do it. Which is what they all say, I guess. Here's me, in this room being questioned, in my hoodie and basketball shorts, looking like a typical lying little hoodlum. And then there's this nice young girl saying she knows it was me. So of course, she's right, isn't she? Nope. Just because she's Little Red Riding Hood doesn't mean she's right. You need evidence, jackass. So after Officer White Knight makes his final offer, which I of course refuse, I then ask, will you trace the phone call? Officer White Knight then says, yes, we will. In one last attempt to scare me into saying, I did it, it was me, I'm sorry. I then say, well, you'll find out when you trace the call then. Officer White Knight then ends his charade, but then he opens his big mouth and says to my dad as we're leaving, if he's not going to own up to it now, we're just wasting time. And now comes the most shameful part of the story. When my dad gives me the we'll stand by you no matter what you've done speech on the way home. Yep, very, very embarrassing. Because I had a reputation for getting in trouble, it was sort of like the boy who cried wolf. I guess it just seemed a little like I was graduating to the next level or something. So, who was it then? Who was the imposter who was out to ruin me? Well, Officer Retard calls me, like 2 weeks later, and he tells me the phone number isn't mine. No apology, no nothing. Then I find out through the grapevine who made the call. The phone call came from my mortal enemy's house. You see, at one point I was friends with this guy. That is till I punched him in the mouth one day, 'cause he was a thief. And let's just say he had to go to the dentist. His last words ever spoken to me again were literally, you better watch your back. But it wasn't him on the phone. Nope, it was a so-called friend who did impersonations of me. And I guess he even pulled off the faded American accent. Oh yeah, they were having a good old slumber party and plotting my doom at 5 a.m. Well, guess what? Turns out that rape threats are quite serious. And my enemies had a few hundred hours of community service coming their way. Not to mention some messed up stuff on their record when applying for a job. So the imposter me, somehow with his gangster tough guy logic, decides I'm to blame. Yep, this is my fault.
And thou who dost curse with eternal burning light those who transgress against thee.
I'm at a mutual friend's house one day when imposter me, the guy who tried to frame me, calls and asks if he can speak to me. And it went a little something like this. Imposter me, why did you snitch on me? Me, I didn't snitch on you. The police traced the phone call. Imposter me, I'm gonna fuck you up. So, realizing that I couldn't reason with this monkey, I said, F you, come try it then, and handed the phone to my friend while he was still making more threats. Of course, nothing even happened. Looking back on everything now, I really deserved an apology from somebody. Apparently, Mary Jane even refused to believe that she was wrong, and that it was actually just a prank phone call from some people who didn't like me very much. Now I get that it wasn't really her fault, and that these people were from my life, but still, for her to say that she knew my voice, and she knew it was me, when I only spoke to her for like 15 minutes? Come on. I never spoke to her again, by the way. So what's the moral of the story? You should give a damn about your reputation, and my life is messed up.
You chuck it on that one, you chuck it on this one, you chuck it on your mother and you chuck it on your father, you chuck it on your brother and you chuck it on your sister, you chuck it on that one and you chuck it on me. Bad boys, what you gonna do? What you gonna do when they come for